Dr. LaBelle, and also General. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Specialist. That was quite a story. So thank you for that. And I just had the great experience of going down to Camp Cravaack, where I was able to shoot the 50 cal. So I heard his voice on the range there. You know, it's getting pretty bad when you can see the near targets, but you can't see the far targets anymore. Now, you know you're getting old. It's time for the younger generation to get out, so I'll just get out of the way. I'd like to thank you very much for being here this evening, for the invitation and the warm welcome. And I'd also like to thank Central Lakes College for sponsoring this fantastic event for our vets. It sure changed in the years since when I was a vet, coming in, actually went in the early 70s, or the 70s, and the way we treat our vets today. Big difference, and it's really heartwarming to see. We live in a great country. It is truly an honor, and it is a privilege for me to represent the 8th District of Minnesota in the House of Congress. It's wonderful to be at an event that is dedicated to veterans exploring career opportunities when they come home. I'm here this evening to talk about our veterans, what they are facing, what they need from us, and how we can help them transition back into civilian life. It goes without saying that we owe our men and women in uniform who have served such a great deal. Every generation of veterans has faced challenges in their unique time in history. And today's generation of veterans are no different than the ones that have gone before them. The veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan are facing very different challenges than what we did. Thanks to the advancement in battlefield care and the speed in which we get our wounded soldiers to the hospital, many of our wounded who would not have survived the battlefields decades ago are surviving. Today, many of our veterans are returning with severe physical and mental wounds. They need our help and understanding, and some will need it for decades in the future. Those are wounded warriors. For others returning veterans, they're facing an economy that is struggling to create and to provide jobs. Unemployment is high. It's far too high for far too long. The economy isn't growing fast enough to accommodate those who want to work, especially for veterans. That's why most of you are here today, and I thank you. Regardless of their situation, our soldiers, sailor, airmen, or Marines, and their families deserve the highest order of our respect and thanks that our country can offer. I commend Central Lakes College for stepping up and proclaiming your willingness to care for our nation's heroes. You are continuing the proud tradition that Minnesotans have showing support for our troops. Gatherings such as these are a great example of how communities can show their appreciation for those who sacrifice so much on our behalf. As our soldiers return home from Iraq and Afghanistan, they need our support. They were there for us. Now we must be there for them. These great Americans are the warriors of this generation and are the heroes of the next. That's why I'm very proud to have authored a bill that President Obama just recently signed into law from the Department of Homeland Security that will allow our veterans, upon returning home, to go through expedited screening in our nation's airports when they're traveling on orders and even with their families. Last year when I was traveling through Ronald Reagan Airport, it really troubled me when I saw a young soldier being treated as a potential terrorist as they went through security, returning home from a war-struck Afghanistan. It struck me that something was very wrong with this picture, and we needed to do something about it. I'm very glad that we did. To our gathered veterans here this evening, too few Americans truly understand the sacrifices that you and your families have made on our behalf. I've heard some people say that our country has been at war for 10 years. I have to respectfully correct them. Our country hasn't been at war for 10 years. Our country's military has been at war. As Americans, we are thankful for the great way of life that has been afforded to us, For that, we owe our men and women in uniform, some of whom have served on several deployments. But unfortunately, that's what we've been demanding of our military, overextending it, multiple deployments, and requiring more and more from those who serve. And if we don't get things right in Washington soon, we'll be underfunding it as well. We can't let that happen. Our national security and, quite frankly, the security of our troops are at stake. I'm working to convince my colleagues in the House and those in the Senate that we cannot weaken our country's security. At a time when asymmetric threats are multiplying, we need to stand strong. I'd like to ask you this question. Is there anything in the world today that would convince you that the future of our children and ours is secure? I don't think so. I can tell you, though, what is bright about our future. We have young men and women who are willing to put on the country's uniform and go defend it. And fight for the principles that made us the greatest nation in the world. As long as we have people who are willing to step up, we're willing to place duty before self, we will be okay. As long as we have people that are willing to do what it takes to defeat the enemy, we'll be all right. As long as we have people like the young men and women we see here today, we're going to be just fine. I do want to tell you about a piece of legislation that's easily passed through Congress and recently signed by the President. And it affects every military member that has come back from the war. It is a bill that restored the PDMRA leave. Many of you who are in uniform understand what that is. The entire Minnesota congressional delegation weighed into the Department of the Army and the Department of Defense to overturn a policy decision that was made while our Red Bulls were deployed in Kuwait and Iraq. The administration decided to change the rules in the middle of their deployment, a decision that would have severely restricted the amount of leave that would have been permitted following a unit's return home from duty. Specialists talk about that, how important that leave is when they come home to transition back in this civilian life. Fortunately, Congressman John Clyde, a retired Marine Corps colonel, authored a bill striking down this decision. Minnesota senators and representatives unanimously agreed that this was an unjust action, and they moved to correct it. Our colleagues in the House and Senate agreed. It was an example of what Congress can do when the federal agencies make decisions that negatively impact the lives of those who defend our nation. In closing, I just want to say, as a career military officer myself, I understand and recognize what a strong military means to this great country of ours. I have the deepest respect for you, what you represent, and what you have done for our country. You are our nation's finest. This event is for career exploration. If between now and August 7th, our troopers don't find employment, I'd like to make an invitation to you. I'd like to invite you to a job fair that we are placing together, hosting in conjunction with the Brainerd Workforce Center. I'd like you to put that in your calendar if you don't mind. It's August 7th from 4 to 7 p.m. at the Cravaack Community Services Building. There will be more information coming out as the date draws near. In the meantime, I thank you, our country thanks you, and the people of the 8th District thank you of this great nation. We wish you all the best on whatever career you choose. Thank you very much.